Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be upcycling a pair of pants into a one-of-a-kind look. We'll be installing zippers along the side seams, adding fabric in between so you can wear them both as baggy and fitted. And it's a super easy upcycle project, so if you're new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, let's get started. Getting started with supplies, you'll need one pair of pants, and you can use any style of pants for this project. I'll be using a standard pair of jeans. Feel free to use wide jeans, skinny jeans, or anything you can find. And the first thing we're going to do is start dethreading the side seams. And how far up the side seam to dethread is really based on the size zipper you're using. I'm using a 30-inch zipper, so I need space at the bottom of the pants and also space at the top. So I'll be dethreading the entire side and going about 4 inches past the top of the zipper. This will put me at the point right below the side pocket stitching. And you don't want to dethread into the side pocket, so if your zipper is too long, you may want to trim it down. Now that we have the ideal length of dethreading in mind, we're going to start by dethreading the hem at the bottom just where the side seam is. And we're going to dethread the hem about 2 inches out on both sides of the side seam. This will open up just enough space so we can start dethreading the side seam, and then we can re-sew the hem in later steps. And repeat this step for the opposite pant leg. From here, we can use a dethreader and go right up the side seam. Most pants have a chain stitch and then also a serge, so you're going to have to do this in 2 passes. And it's fairly easy to do. If you want to use scissors, you can, but you're going to reduce the amount of fabric on that seam. And the goal is to keep as much fabric intact as possible. Then go ahead and repeat this process for the opposite pant leg. You'll have a lot of threads hanging around, so you'll want to remove all those threads before moving on to the next step. And once you have both side seams dethreaded and cleaned up, the pants are ready, so for the moment, we can place them off to the side. For this project, we're going to be adding fabric in between the side seams, so you're going to want to find a fabric that's on the lighter weight side. I'll be using a lighter weight canvas, and the reason you want it to be on the lighter weight side is because you don't want this fabric to be super bunchy on the inside of the pants when you zip it closed, so just keep that in mind when you're picking out your fabric. Next, we're going to move to the fold of the fabric and grab our zipper. We want this piece to be the same length as our zipper so it lines up when we sew everything together. And the easiest way to do this is place the zipper on the fold and pull the center away from the fold. This will curve the zipper, and the more you curve it back, the bigger the opening will be. This will be just half of the opening size because we're cutting it on the fold, so we're going to open up that fabric afterwards, and that will be the actual size. I ended up placing my zipper about 6 inches out from the center. Once you found your placement, place a few pins and cut out the panel. After cutting, unfold the panel and double check the size. If it looks too big, you may need to cut a new panel. We will be adding stitches in the middle that can reduce the size, so just keep that in mind. If you're satisfied with the size, we can take that panel and use it as a template. Place it on the fold of the fabric and cut out one more panel. The goal is to make these exactly the same with the same width, length, and curve. And if you want, you can keep them just like this and move on to the next step. But we're going to be adding vertical folds to make it look more like an accordion. This is also going to make that extra fabric fit a little bit better once we zip the sides closed. Realistically, you can add as many folds as you want, but we're going to start by adding 3 to each panel. I'm going to fold each side in about 2 inches and then also fold at the center. Place a few pins to keep everything lined up, and then we're going to start by sewing the outside folds first and then the center. Do the exact same thing for the second panel. Fold the sides, the center, and stitch in the same order. You may want to measure the side folds just so you get the same results with both of the panels. And remember, with this first fold, we're folding the right sides together. And after finishing up the stitch, double check, make sure the sides are equal on both panels and everything is looking good. Next, we're going to fold the middle in half in between the fold and the center with wrong sides together. This is the fold that's going to give us the accordion look, so you don't want to skip this step. And we're only doing one fold on each side of the panel. Once you have both panels folded and pinned down, we're going to move to the sewing machine and stitch right along the edge of the fold. And if you're wondering, I'm stitching as close as I can to that edge. This is because the further you stitch in, the more fabric you're going to reduce from the overall width. So you want to try to sew as close to that edge as possible. And as you can see, this gives us an accordion finish and also function. If you want, you can keep adding more folds to reduce the size of each fold, but for the video, I'm going to keep it just like this and move on to the next step. So place these to the side, grab your pants, and open up each side seam. Locate your zipper and place it in the center of your dethreaded area. You should have about 4 inches of space at the bottom and also a couple inches of space at the top. Flip the right side of the zipper to the right side of the pants fabric. Make sure you have it lined up correctly in the side seam. Grab one of your side panels, locate the edge that corresponds with the back panel of the pants. Place the right sides together, and starting at the top, we're going to pin the 3 layers together and work all the way down to the bottom of the zipper. Since this is a curve, it makes it a little bit trickier, so you have to place the pins in small increments. Locate your second zipper, place it on the opposite pant leg with right sides together. Be sure to have the top of the zipper in line with the first zipper. Locate your second fabric panel, and we're going to do the same thing as the first one. Place the right sides together, lining up the 3 layers starting at the top. pin in small increments till you reach the bottom of the zipper. Once everything is pinned down, we're going to stitch both sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're using a different style of zipper like an invisible zipper, you may need to increase your seam allowance. After sewing, pull both of the sides in, double check, make sure all the layers got stitched together. As you can see, this gives a slight curve to the side seam, but that's no worry because we're actually going to be changing the bottom to a jogger pant, so it's going to look more natural. But if you don't want to add that in future steps, it still looks totally fine with a regular hemmed bottom. Also, something to think about, if you made this a super wide panel, then that curve is going to be more harsh, giving you a bigger curve on the side seam in the end. So if you're trying to avoid it from flaring out too far, I recommend sticking around 6 inches of width on the side panels. But anyways, moving on to the next step, we're going to be adding a top stitch to both sides, and this is going to help cover up the raw material on the inside of the pants just to clean it up a little bit. You're going to want to add the top stitch on the outside of the seam allowance, so that way when it locks the layers together, that seam allowance will be on the inside of the stitch and totally hidden. The best way to do this is to pull the zipper away from the pants material and the side panel material, place a few pins so the layers don't shift around, and then go ahead and add your top stitches. Repeat this step for both pant legs. And as you can see, the top stitch also cleans up that edge, makes it look nice and neat and professional. I do recommend matching the thread color to the thread color that's on the pants. This is going to help everything blend together. Now we can flip the pants inside out and start to line up the opposite side. Just like with the first side, we're going to start at the top, place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the pants, and then the fabric layer on top. I do recommend keeping the zipper closed for this step. This is going to help that zipper stay lined up as you're sewing. Repeat this step for the opposite side. And before you start sewing, just double check, make sure that panel is lined up with the opposite side of the zipper and everything is looking good. Because if it's not lined up correctly, it could add a subtle warp to the zipper. But anyways, from here, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch both sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just like with the opposite side, we're going to double check, make sure all the layers got stitched together and everything is looking good. If it all checks out, we can flip the right sides back out, open up the zippers, and double check it from the right side. Now we can add a top stitch to the opposite side of the zipper. This one is a little bit tricky because you have less space to work with, so just take your time. The goal is to try to match it to the opposite side so when you zip it closed, it looks fairly uniform. Next, we're going to flip the wrong sides out and seal off the openings on the side seams. Starting with the bottom, place the right sides together. When you get to the bottom of the zipper, you're going to want to pull the zipper ends in so it's on the inside of the pants. You're also going to want to start the stitch on the inside of the fabric panel so that way it seals off the bottom of the zipper and hides it from the outside. And don't worry, if you don't sew it right the first time, you can always go back and re-sew a little bit in to cover it up more. Then we're going to do the same thing with the top. Pull the zipper ends in and start the stitch on the fabric panel and go up towards the pocket. And I do recommend placing a few pins just to keep those layers lined up as you're sewing. I also made the pant stitch directly on the factory stitch. This does leave us with the raw edge on the inside, so if you want, you can use a serger or a zigzag stitch to clean it up. But for the video, I'm just going to leave it as is and carry on to the next step. So we're going to flip the right sides out one more time, move to the bottom opening on the pant leg, and what we're going to do is reattach the hem, so we're going to fold the fabric inward so it's lined up with the rest of the hem. As you can see, I didn't sew my side seam exactly on the manufacturing stitch, so it's a little bit off, but that's totally fine. I'm going to continue on with it. If you want, you can dethread, realign, and try again. Once you have both pant legs ready, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and add the hem stitch. We're not going all the way around the pant leg, we're just stitching the area that we dethreaded. At this point, you can try the pants on, see how they fit, and if you like them, you can keep them as is, or you can transform them into a pair of jogger pants. And that's what we're going to be doing in this next step. I'm going to be using a 1.5 inch width elastic. I found that this is a pretty good size to make jogger pants. You can go smaller or larger, but this really depends on how much room you have to work with at the bottom of the pants. Because we're going to be doing this the easy way, we're just folding the bottom of the pants inward. This will create the loop for the elastic to go through, so you want to make this to the size of your elastic. You do want to make the loop a little bit wider than the elastic so that way it can feed through easily and not bunch up. And what I did is add about a 1/2 inch to the fold so that way the elastic feeds through easily. We are going to be feeding the elastic through after we add the stitch, so we need an opening to feed the elastic through, so you need to leave about a 2 to 4 inch gap. Then after we feed the elastic through, we're going to sew the opening closed. Once you have both pant legs folded and pinned down, take it to the sewing machine and add a stitch along the top edge. I'm also going to be adding a second stitch as close as I can to the bottom edge. This is optional. Once both pant legs are complete, we're going to grab the elastic. I cut mine about twice the length as the circumference of the opening. This makes it a lot easier to feed it through the opening and also adjust it to the correct size. Locate the opening and feed the elastic through to the opposite side. And I do recommend using something long to push the elastic through. As you can see, the elastic is way too long for the opening, but what we're going to be doing is pulling the elastic out, and the further you pull it, the more that bottom pant leg is going to cinch together, so you kind of have to play around with it to find the correct size. To finish it, we're going to pull the elastic out, sew the two elastic sides together, trim the elastic ends, and then seal off the opening. Repeat the exact same steps for the opposite pant leg, and be sure to stretch the elastic the same exact way so that way it matches the first pant leg. There is a possibility of stretching it too much and making the pant legs too small, so the best thing to do is try them on before you seal off the opening. And moving into the final step, that's adding your branding. I'm using leather strips added with double-sided rivets. I also added zipper pulls. This makes it a lot easier to use the side zippers, and it also gives it a nice detail in the end. And there's a ton of fun ways you can brand it. You can add different branding on the inside fabric, so that way it can be minimalistic when you close it, and then branded when you open it. I also recommend playing around with the width and length of the side panels. Not only that, but you don't need to add these just on the side seams. You can also add them in the middle of the panel, the back of the panel, and also add multiple. There's a ton of different ways you can take this upcycle idea, so have some fun with it, get creative, and make a pair of pants that's unique to your style. And there you have it, your new one-of-a-kind pants are complete. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this project. You can do smaller zipper openings, you can do wider zipper openings, you can really add a lot of fabric in between to make them extra baggy, or you can extend the zipper all the way down the side, and the sewing process is all gonna be the same. Like always, I wanna see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at Properfit Clothing, and until then, I'm gonna keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.